everyone. Thanks for joining my session. I'm Eric Stockton, the VP of Demand Generation over here at SharpSpring from Constant Contact. And as a marketing leader, I guess you could probably say that I'm practicing what I'm about to preach for maybe the last 12 years or so. So most of you know Constant Contact. It's a well-known leader in email marketing for years. And now what you might not know is that Constant Contact is a lot more than just email. Last year, Constant Contact acquired SharpSpring's sales and marketing automation platform and connected CRM. And so now we provide an entire suite of additional tools for businesses and agencies that are looking to increase pipeline and revenue for themselves and then also, for their clients. And so as part of my job, I work with marketing leaders every day, and I see a lot of the sort of same challenges that tend to pop up regardless of what industry or niche that they're in. And if I sort of stack rank them, the number one recurring theme that I hear from marketers is really being unable to keep the attention of the C-suite when reporting on all of their marketing efforts and what they're doing. Which translates obviously to getting more budget and credibility within the organization, having a larger seat at the table, that sort of thing. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this session. And I think, for a lot of you, it might feel familiar, right? And it's really never a good feeling. But how many times has it happened to you as a marketer or head of a marketing team at an organization where you start talking in a QBR setting or a monthly reporting session about your campaign tactics and results, and the CEO's eyes start to immediately glaze over, right? They start to tune out a little bit. And I think it can be extremely frustrating to try and communicate your team's very real impact on the business to a leadership team who seems disengaged or, like they don't feel like marketing is really a major contributor to the overall organization. And it sort of takes a back seat to all of the other departments, especially, obviously sales. And I think that that's really true to the point where we sat down and said, okay, well, like how many marketers really feel this way? And we partnered with Ascend2 Research, which is a research firm to, go out and conduct a study of about 172 marketing professionals, and found that only 41% of the marketers that they surveyed really felt like marketing's efforts and processes are really well communicated and frankly appreciated inside of the organization, especially by the C-suite. And so as marketers, I think, this stat probably rings true for a lot of you who are watching today, because, it really illustrates that larger issue behind what I'm about to talk about in the session, which is, how do you really get a larger, more strategic place inside of the organization to help direct and have a bigger seat at the table. And so, what we're going to talk about is really just three things. It's number one, what can you do to start communicating and connecting your marketing team's efforts to set goals to the business outcomes within your organization that really matter to the CEO and the CFO, right? Particularly the things that they themselves are going to be reporting upwards to either the board or the investors. Really what it boils down to at the end of the day is really pipeline and marketing's contribution to pipeline and then ultimately revenue. And so that's sort of number one. Number two is really the steps that you can take to align your marketing team directly to the things that they care about, like pipeline and revenue, and really get things lined up so that you can do number three, which is communicate. And frankly, I think this is probably the most important, or one of the most important things, is communicate how you're consistently lining up to, building your value, keeping marketing top of mind within your organization, and ultimately sort of get that bigger seat at the table and becoming part of part of the strategic conversations that are happening inside the organization. So let's jump in. And I think the first way that I can do that is really to start by saying that, I've really found that the best way to start getting the marketing team on the same page as the leadership team is to really find out, especially as you come in as a brand new leader, what are those desired business outcomes that they are themselves taking to and reporting up to the board or the investors. And what are the sort of the main things that the leadership team is really focusing on, and what are their goals, and what are the outcomes that they want to see in the year, that sort of thing, so that when you are talking in a meeting, the conversation is really about those things, right? Because that's the thing that they care about the most, and ultimately what they connects well with how they're thinking throughout the rest of the time that you're not meeting with them, right? These are the things that they're typically reporting on. So how do you do that? And so at the end of the day, the best advice that I can sort of give is, if you head up your marketing team or you oversee marketing efforts in your organization, really to set a regular meeting with the CFO or the CM or the CEO, and probably the head of sales. I think it probably goes without saying, to ask them what their particular goals are, right? And then just get an outline of what those things are. And then find out, how those particular desired business outcomes that they're needing to hit, those key metrics, those things that they need to really hit, are connected to where marketing fits in, right? So if you sort of think about it like a Venn diagram, these are the things that they care about, and then you want to have your marketing efforts is probably overlapping on that circle in the Venn diagram as much as humanly possible. And there are things that are a little bit more squishy, like telling the brand story and value proposition, things like that are a little bit softer, but still, like, a lot of your circle, around marketing ought to be tied to those key performance indicators that they themselves are carrying. So, how you do that is, really to figure out like where marketing lines up. You literally have a list of their key metrics, and then how does marketing particularly contribute or reinforce or empower those particular business goals. And so what you don't want to be doing is talking about things like the vanity metrics that we are, as marketers, are sort of known to hone in on, things that we immediately live in and day out. And I don't want to say that those things aren't very important. They are, right? CTR, engagement, downloads, tactics, things like that. But if you start doing that in that particular meeting, in that particular setting, you're really going to lose your audience. So instead, start by coming up with 2 or 3 solid examples of where your marketing efforts directly tie to those business outcomes that they care about. That's where you start building your credibility with the C-suite, when you start really sort of honing in and focusing on those, sharing those, and then building on those over time. And then, so once you're sort of in the routine of meeting with the executives, and kind of going through and establish sort of what those KPIs are, it's really, identifying on a pretty consistent basis, on a regular basis, where you are hitting the numbers that you said you were going to do, right? And so I think in that particular scenario, just continuing to build credibility over time by saying you're going to do something and then going and doing it. And of course, we all fall short. And so where we fall short, you're showing exactly first of all, you're not hiding it or obscuring it. You're sort of leading the conversation with where you fell short, because that builds credibility too. You just lean into that and you say, here's where we fell short, and here's our plan to get back to sort of close the gap. And you start doing that. And again, consistency is key. Doing that over time is key, because it does a couple of things. One is it establishes credibility for you, because you know what's going on. And, the executive's not wondering when they're not meeting with you, what's marketing doing? How are they doing it? Et cetera, et cetera. But also because they know that you are caring about the things that they care about, right? And you're doing that on a consistent basis. And you're sort of, for lack of a better word, training into non-marketing executives how to think the way that you're thinking, right? And as long as they know and they trust that you're thinking about the right things, then you can start tying, to the specifics. So this is where it's going to be key to really have your marketing team work in tandem with sales, right? Especially if you're in B2B or, any kind of SaaS environment, you have to know that this is where sales and marketing, if they're not on the same page, you are just sort of setting up, yourself for disaster, right? And so really, when I say staying on the same page, it is really going to organize around most often SQL or pipeline creation, because that's what sales understands. And if you can, the more often you can, talk about pipeline creation and SQL, the more aligned you're going to be in meetings or in conversations. So SQL is kind of that single source of truth that says this is where sales and marketing meet. And so in order to do this, you kind of have to think about, okay, well, if SQLs are really that connective tissue between what sales wants and what marketing can deliver, it becomes that lowest common denominator between the two teams to really get that sales and marketing alignment, the way you want it to be. Because the last thing you want to do is go into a QBR or a monthly reporting meeting where sales is saying one thing and marketing is saying another. And most leaders would probably tell you, CEOs, CFOs especially, like if you've ever heard this common, like I hear it a lot, it's like, the CFO will say, I always feel like the target is moving, right? Sales is saying one thing and it's because of this, or they're pointing to some reason they think that the issue, they're falling short or they're not hitting quota, and then on the marketing side, they're doing the exact same thing, but they're pointing at something else. And so the target, feels like it's really well established at the beginning. And then you go into, the month or the quarter, or you come out of the other end of the quarter and you've all, you missed your number, and everybody's sort of saying, okay, well, we think this is what it is. And they feel like the target has shifted and moved. SQL is kind of that one metric that makes it hard for the target to move around too much. So if marketing is saying this is how many MQLs we need to be able to hit this as SQL, and we focus on high quality conversions and volume, obviously, to be able to hit the SQL target, then at the same time, sales is looking at it and saying, we need this many SQLs, and we know what our win rate is, and we know what our velocity is. So we know that this is the number of deals that's going to come out the other end. That connective tissue in the middle is the SQL. So really focusing on that and really enforcing it. And then, if you think about the one thing that we sort of miss on as marketers, which is kind of ironic, knowing that, marketers are typically communicators, typically, data-driven, and, for people who are communicators and being data-driven, we really don't do well as internal marketers, right? We focus on numbers, we focus on, producing results, but then we sort of forget that, those results need to be communicated outward, or it's like a tree falling in the woods. And so like, that's the big thing, is like getting that. Once you have that established credibility with the C-suite, and you're making really headway towards aligning more of your marketing efforts to pipeline and revenue, you really want to solidify that progress to stay or by staying top of mind internally within the organization and within the leadership team. So really on a regular basis, being able to point things out that are working, and why they're working and how marketing is contributing to that. So, really what you're going to be talking about, sort of ad nauseum is, the key metrics that drive those business outcomes, and knowing how to effectively report and reinforce the things that you want the executives to be aware of about marketing and what it's doing, and what your team's contributions are to the overall business outcomes that they care about. And you do that by actively showing those results very clearly. And you can do it in the form of a flash report, but honestly, as simple as it sounds, I find the most easy and nicely sort of digestible way to do it is just send an email either on a Monday or on a Friday that says, this is what, our metrics are, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. And, the one piece of advice that I would say is stay away from the vanity metrics like we talked about earlier, but then also make it real, right? Don't just give them just don't throw up a bunch of numbers in front of somebody. Nobody has time for that. Really what you want to do is add color commentary around it and say, this is what we did, this is how many MQLs, and this is why, and this is where they came from, and this is why you should care, right? And, when you do it that way, it makes it easier to understand and sort of just very quickly digest. And I think that's super important. So at the end of the day, just to sort of, pull all of that, together, as a marketer, if you really want to begin, having that bigger seat at the table, talking the language of the C-suite and illustrating to them the tie-in between your marketing efforts and what you're doing and how those things can directly impact pipeline and revenue and the business outcomes that your CEO cares about. And then also doing that in a reliable way where you sort of drop the vanity metrics and you're able to speak instead to the key metrics like, SQLs, pipeline creation, pipeline velocity, win rates, those types of things. And you do this consistently, and you're meeting with the team regularly, and you're showing where your gaps are and what your plans are to close the gap. And you're able to show that over time, you really just start building that credibility that you're looking for, to the CEO. And that's really how you as a marketer, come in and earn the trust and build that reputation within your organization of having the knowledge and the skill set to be able to make that impression and really start being listened to inside of the organization. And, it's not a magic process, right? There's nothing tricky about this. There's nothing special about it. But if you really kind of hone in and you do those three things, you start to really build that, and you do it consistently, frankly, you start to reach that goal of getting your marketing team that larger voice, that larger seat at the table. So I think at the end of the day, those are the things that I would point to, if I'm thinking about it in my own career and what I've been doing over the last, 12 or 15 years, that's really what I could kind of point to that has really helped me over the years. So hopefully this will help you. Thank you for, listening to my session. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, if there are any questions or anything that I can help with, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can visit us at constantcontact.com/CRM. Anything that I can do to help, happy to do so. Thank you.